In the 19th and 20th centuries, Britain manufactured 20% of everything on Earth. Its empire ruled over a third of the global population. They pioneered the steam engine, industrial banking, and even the modern stock exchange. For 2 centuries, Britain alone wrote the rules of global trade. Fast forward to today, and that same country has cycled through 6 prime ministers in just 9 years. Salaries are stagnating, public utilities are in dire disrepair, and local city councils are going bankrupt one after another. Britain's current paralysis is the result of specific policy choices made by its own democracy, trapping the nation in an economic cycle that is becoming increasingly difficult to escape. The cycle began in 2016. By voting to leave the European Union, the UK severed frictionless access to 250 million customers, putting the economy on a path toward a GDP 6% smaller than it otherwise would have been. This exit introduced customs declarations, VAT handling, and mandatory border checks. For small exporters, these new costs stripped away the profit margins that made trade viable. This chart shows how the subsequent arrival of COVID and the energy crisis forced the government to borrow heavily. UK public debt climbed from 50% in 2008 to breaking the 100% threshold by the early 2020s. A shrinking economy paired with a mountain of new debt left the UK highly vulnerable to the demands of the global financial markets. While we vote for politicians, a second invisible government exists, the bond traders. During a debt crisis, they dictate national policy through the mechanism of interest rates. When a government needs money, it issues a bond. It's essentially a loan. You give the state £100 today, and they promise to pay you a fixed interest, say £3, every year for a decade. These bonds are traded in a secondary market. If investors panic and dump their bonds, the market price might crash from £100 to $50, but that yearly £3 payout stays exactly the same. Because the paper is now cheaper but the cash payout hasn't changed, the effective interest rate, the yield, actually doubles. This sets the price for all future borrowing. If the secondary market is offering a 6% yield, the government is forced to match that high rate on every new loan it takes, drastically increasing the country's interest bill. By simply selling pieces of paper, bond traders can make a nation's debt unpayable and force a prime minister to resign. In 2022, Prime Minister Liz Truss attempted to stimulate growth by announcing £45 billion in unfunded tax cuts. Traders viewed the plan as reckless and dumped UK bonds. Yields spiked so violently that the Bank of England had to make an emergency intervention to save the country's pension funds. Truss resigned just 49 days later. In a desperate search for revenue, the government then abolished the non-dom tax status, which had historically allowed wealthy global residents to live in London without paying tax on their foreign income. The strategy backfired. In 2025 alone, an estimated 16,500 millionaires left the UK. When they moved, they took their investment capital and tax revenue with them. This is the cycle Britain is stuck in. High debt makes traders nervous, so they demand higher yields. Those yields make new loans more expensive, which increases the debt, forcing even more borrowing just to pay the rising interest. Britain is now caught in a tightening loop, where every attempt to raise money or stimulate the economy only deepens the crisis. Borrowing to invest in growth triggers an immediate reaction from bond traders, who spike yields and tighten the financial squeeze. But the alternative, slashing public spending and raising taxes, stifles growth and risks triggering a voter revolt. This crisis offers 3 warnings for the rest of the world. First, capital is highly mobile. Attempting to tax the ultra-wealthy often causes an immediate flight of capital and jobs. Second, interest payments can paralyze a nation. The UK now spends more on debt interest than it does on defense, education, and healthcare combined. And third, economic stagnation shatters political stability. As the two-party system fractures, it becomes possible for candidates to win power with a tiny fraction of the total vote. The UK's experience shows that when the mathematical demands of the bond market clash with political willpower, the markets usually win.